Welcome to the podcast and the stream, and this is the place to be right now. Those are the real words, actually. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, those are real. Those are real words that I said. Welcome, welcome to 8 Bits, the podcast about people behind the tech. I am PJ Betts, and I am coming to you live from the coldest that Orlando, Florida has been all year. My house is 65 degrees and I'm freezing. With me, as always, Brandon Minnick. But Brandon, you're not home. You're coming to us from a very special location today.
Yeah, I was interesting because you're saying Florida was cold. I'm in Norway right now, and it's basically December. So woke up this morning to a nice fine layer of snow. I didn't pack any snow boots. I don't know why I didn't check the weather before traveling to Norway. But I got one sweater, one jacket, and a scarf, and this great hat to keep me warm. So,
bud,
I am surviving.
Well, to be fair, you've been on the road for a hot minute, so you're probably thinking, "Oh, I'll check the weather for the place I'm headed," and then beyond that, your brain was like, "Yeah, it's all the same."
Yeah, I will say, yeah, long story short, I wasn't supposed to stay in Europe this long. I was in Prague when we had our last episode with Dr. G.
That's
if
right.
you missed it, go check it out. She's amazing. And I was supposed to fly home. And then even when I landed in Prague, Norway still had rules out there that said Americans couldn't get in. And then the conference ended up basically helping us out. So I was able to get in. And it was like, well, I could fly from Europe all the way back to the west coast of the US for 5 days, do it all over again, and talk to my wife, and she's like, you know what, just stay out there. So yeah, I've been out there the whole time. I've been doing laundry in the hotel. It's been great.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Nothing like hotel laundry, I gotta say. And as a new person to the traveling for work group, like, I'm very excited for the day that I'm gonna have to be like, look, I packed 2 pairs of jeans and I've been here longer than I expected. Can I please do laundry?
Oh yeah.
I don't even know the process. I don't know the process for that. That's terrifying.
So eventually you'll just get to the point where you have the hotel do the laundry for you, even though it's like $80 for a load of laundry, just because you just can't. Like, washing underwear in the sink just isn't cutting it anymore.
No, yeah, that doesn't sound great at all.
But anyways, I am here for an amazing conference. It's called NDC Oslo. That's Norwegian Developer Conference. It's one of the biggest conferences in the world, especially for .NET developers. So if anybody out there wants to check it out, NDC will be live streaming. So if you want, you can buy a ticket, see everything live. They will also be posting all the videos, so you can even catch my session on GraphQL that's coming up later this week. It'll land on YouTube sometime. So we'll keep Googling NDC Oslo, Brandon Minnick, GraphQL to learn about all the things. But yeah, really excited. It's going to be a fantastic conference. There's already been 2 days of workshops where I was just telling PJ how we were hacking, or I was in a hacking workshop hosted by Scott Helm, one of the premier security experts in the world. So just
the guy.
A true honor to be in his presence. It's been pretty incredible.
Did you guys did y'all illegally hit F12 and inspect some code?
Oh yeah. Oh, we've been using all the developer tools. We've been doing SQL injections. We've been doing cross-site scripting.
Don't you dare! Don't you dare hit F12 if you're in the state of Missouri. It's not allowed.
He also taught me, or taught all of us, how to take down Netflix for your whole hotel. So, and he's staying at the same hotel I'm in.
No, Scott, please be kind. There's no other entertainment in this hotel. I can only watch the snow outside for so long. So are you eventually going to be coming back? Is this conference your last bit of this trip? Is this the last leg?
Yeah, basically the last thing for the year. I'm flying back home Saturday. So really looking forward to being home, being in my own bed, and then not having to get on a plane for the rest of the year will be very nice.
Fantastic. Saturday, I am running a half marathon, and ask me how well I've trained for it.
PJ.
I have not trained very well for it at all. It's been bad. The longest distance I've run is, I think, 6.5 miles. So it's going to be a treat to go double that for the first time. There's going to be a lot of walking and a lot of maybe eating, like, I don't know, Sour Patch Kids to keep my energy up as I go. I don't know how I'm supposed to do this. Look, I wear Hawaiian shirts in December. I'm clearly not the person that should be running half marathons. But yeah, that's what's going on with me is this half marathon. I know you're training for a very special run that's happening in like February, March, right?
Yeah, doing the full marathon in March. So right after this, I'm going to go run 6 miles.
Ooh, right after this, I'm going to go inspect a tree that was cut down in my front yard during this morning. And I'm very excited because I hated that tree. It was a bad tree. Bad tree. Listen, speaking of technology, we have a very special guest here today, don't we, Brandon? Someone that you actually know from real world life.
We do. Such an amazing person. One of my favorite people. He's actually, I don't even know if he knows this, but he's one of the reasons I have the job I have now. So long story short, I turned down this job, and then I found out that he, along with a couple other people who I looked up to, were joining the team. And I was like, I had the opportunity to work with these guys, and immediately went back and asked if I could still have the job. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Jim Bennett.
Ba, 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 ba.
Hello. How goes it, everyone?
Oh, it's so good to see you again, Jim. For the people out there who don't know, who are you and what do you do?
Who am I? What do I do? So I'm Jim. I work for Microsoft. I'm what's called an education cloud advocate, which is one of these great titles that nobody outside of Microsoft knows what it means, and most people in Microsoft don't know what it means. But I do the same job as Brandon. Point that way because he's on that side of the screen. I do the same job as Brandon. I focus on the education space. So I help students, I help educators be successful with Microsoft technologies. Mainly university, a little bit of high school, maybe boot camps, career changes, but mainly kind of university level. And a lot of that is around just making sure they've got the resources they need to learn how to use the stuff that we make. IoT, the Internet of Things, is my particular passion. So I play a lot with little devices, hence why you can probably see behind me I have all manner of different gadgets and gizmos and,
How many of those devices connect to the internet?
Pretty much most of them. I mean, this one here, this is an AI box. It's called an Azure Percept. It's got cameras with AI accelerators and microphones with AI accelerators, and that connects to the internet. I've got all manner of Raspberry Pis and terminals and Arduino devices there, and all my lights connect to the internet, and I can just press a button on a Stream Deck on my desk, and then if it ever catches up, it will change. All that kind of good stuff.
Mine doesn't connect to the internet, but I can go with our brand colors back here. Bam. Oh. There's what we call in the biz 8-bits green.
Nice.
Trademark pending.
Trademark pending. It's coming.
You should have sent me the RGB code for that, and I could have done that on my lights. I could have matched.
Oh, man. I don't know. It's this button on the controller. Do you see it?
So, Jim, thank you so much for joining us today. I feel like you are just the perfect guest to have on this show because 8-Bits is all about the people behind the tech and even more specifically about how to get into tech. And like you mentioned a minute ago, that's quite literally your job is to bring tech to students. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious because I played computer games growing up. I could use the command line in order to run the computer games, but I never learned to code as a kid. So tell us, what are you bringing to these students, and also how young are we teaching kids tech nowadays?
So in terms of what I'm bringing to the students, I'm trying to make sure that what we at Microsoft provide for them is student friendly. So if you've ever waded through our Microsoft documentation, if you ever waded through all of our online learning materials, we're really great at building stuff for professional developers. Yeah, we're really great at assuming you know all the things, and then we bring you more. So, you want to learn about how to connect a Raspberry Pi to the internet. Yeah, you want to connect to the internet, you want to send data to the cloud, what have you. And we've got great documentation that talks about the security of how you should connect and, how you should architect your application, which is really, really important stuff if you're building up your big company and you want to have all the things. But if you're just, you're a student, it's your first year of computer science, you've just dabbled a little bit in C# or Java for object-oriented programming 101, and you've got this Raspberry Pi and you want to connect it to the internet, what do you do? So I'm there to try and think about how I can build the right content. So you go on the internet and search for IoT connect to the internet. I want to make sure that what you get when you do that Google search is something that's actually going to help you at your level. So it's, let's just do some basic Python code. Let's not show you all the examples with all this, that, and the other that you would need in the enterprise world. Here's the 2 lines of code to make it do the thing. So kind of that's really my area of focus is let's simplify.
Where were you? Where were you when I was learning to code a year ago? It's exactly what I needed, Jim.
I was still doing this stuff. It's just, I guess we hadn't got enough of it out there yet.
Listen, also I was brand new to code. I didn't know what I was doing. And Brandon watched me go through it where I'd be like, I'm trying to do this and I don't know. And Brandon was like, well, let me see if I can help. And I think it does come from a certain amount of knowing how to Google and what it is that you're actually looking for can be difficult. So I am, for one, very happy that in the future, no one will have to go through what I went through of typing, how do I make Visual Studio run my code? It will just be information that's easily found. Because the first time I opened Visual Studio Code, I was like, what? How do I make it go? Because I knew how to make it go with the website I was building with Brandon. There was a little run button. I didn't know what I was doing. It was intimidating. It's fantastic.
You've kind of hit on the nail of the difference between a senior level programmer, your principal level, staff level, senior level programmer, and your kind of junior level programmer. It's not about how good you are at coding. It's about how good you are at Googling.
Yeah.
It's true. There was a great session. So we run this thing Microsoft called the Imagine Cup. It's like a student competition. Get students together, build projects, win big prizes. And we had a kind of kickoff event for it. And Scott Hanselman, I don't know if you heard of him, vaguely famous guy from somewhere around Portland. He did a session, and one of the things he pointed out is the difference between the more advanced programmers, the more senior programmers, and the junior ones is just that we've come across a whole class of problems before, and we know how to cut out those problems quickly. So when we hit a thing that doesn't work, if you're a junior, you're like, I don't know where to start. Whereas a more senior programmer would come along and go, it definitely can't be that, or here's a little test I can do for that, and I can clear out that whole class of problems and just focus down. So we can narrow down quicker because we've seen it before. That's really the only difference.
It's as simple as knowing where to look in the logs for the error that you actually need in order to figure out the problem. That just comes with experience.
Oh, yeah. I've worked with a guy who was a phenomenal programmer simply because he was a genius with regex.
Oh,
and
wow.
So when it came to architecting, I know they exist. When it came to architecting applications, he didn't have the experience, so he wasn't able to kind of architect a whole application at his experience level because he'd never kind of come across those problems. But when something was broken, it'll be like, right, here's the logs. And he would be able to do his regex queries through the logs, and he could trace through exactly what was happening in these really complex applications. And these were financial applications. So we've got data coming in, prices, stock prices, currency rates, all that kind of stuff, orders going in and out, and he could just navigate through the logs and find out the problem. And it's like, yes, you're a genius. You're an absolute genius because you can do that. And there was a more junior programmer, you'd say this doesn't work, they would just be hours trying to figure it out. He'd be like, bosh, here's the log statements.
Oh man, that's fantastic. And I love that we are actually in, you and I are in fairly similar fields. I'm on the education team at GitLab. That's kind of our thing. We're trying to bring DevOps to classrooms. Yeah. So earlier Brandon asked you about what are you bringing to students? How are you getting students involved? So I want to keep hearing more about that because I'm community taught. I learned with Brandon and I learned with Chloe Condon, and I learned with Code Academy, where I actually typed out code and learned stuff. So like, what are I don't know. I just want to hear more. I didn't want to interrupt, but I also I want to hear more about what you're doing with students. How about you said with boot camps? What have you done with boot camps?
So I haven't done that much with boot camps. Across our team, we mainly prioritize universities. But kind of the biggest thing we have been doing that kind of overlaps with the boot camp space is we've been trying to build curricula. Mm-hmm. So if you are a boot camp, for example, or you're a community college, or you're one of these universities that doesn't have a $50 billion endowment because you're not an actual hedge fund disguised as a university for tax reasons. But if you're one of these institutions, you need this kind of content. You need to know what to teach. And it's a massive cost to train up teachers, get them to build the content and get them to teach the content, especially to keep that content fresh, to keep the content up to date and to keep it relevant. I've worked with a number of universities who don't teach cloud computing because they just don't have that in their curricula. They don't have the time or money to rebuild a whole load of courses, all are based around cloud computing. So we, as a team that I'm on, we've tried to put together those curricula. So, if you wanted to teach web dev, you could build up a 24 lesson course that you could go and teach, or you could just take hours. We've built one. It's MIT licensed. It's on GitHub, and it's completely free for anyone to use. And you can do it self-guided learning. So if you come across it, you can wade through it yourself, and you can learn the basics of JavaScript. This is what a function is. This is what a loop is. This is a little bit on CSS. It's a little bit of HTML, and learn how to build your first web app. And then now you can go off and learn how to deploy to cloud if you want to. And we have that there, and you can learn all that for free. But if you're a lecturer, if you're a teacher, you can also just take that content and you can teach in the classroom. And person on my team who actually created our web one, Jen Looper, she runs an organization called Front End Foxes, which is a non-profit organization for female identifying developers who want to learn how to code. It came out of Vue Vixens. They used to focus on Vue as a web framework. Yes. Now they just do a whole load of just anything web. And they are teaching cohorts of students from this Web Developer for Beginners course. So you can literally sign up, join the cohort and learn it. And we're kind of expanding that. We've got machine learning for beginners. We've got data science for beginners. We've got Internet of Things for beginners. So you can literally, you want to learn Internet things. We've got a 24 lesson course you can work through. Obviously, it was built by Microsoft, so whenever you have to go to the cloud, we point you towards Microsoft services. We have to fund this somehow.
Listen, I get it. You got to don't bite the hand that feeds you. You got to lead it right back up the arm.
Exactly. But we've made it so that we teach you the basics. So what is IoT? What is the Internet of Things? What are the different microcontrollers and single board computers? What is a sensor? What does it do? How does it work? How does an actuator work? When you're connecting to the cloud, why do you connect to the cloud? What do you do with it? What do you think about the data that you do? How do you bring artificial intelligence to IoT devices, which is kind of one of the big growth areas at the moment? And we kind of build up all that, but we use the Microsoft platform as the tools that you use to do it. We teach you the Internet of Things using the Microsoft tools. We don't teach you the Microsoft tools. We teach you the Internet of Things. That's the focus. And it's kind of this kind of stuff we're doing so that if you're a student and you want to learn how to do the Internet of Things, the course is there. You can work through it. We've worked with a company called Seed Studios who make hardware. So you can literally buy the kit. IoT, it's Internet of Things. You need the things. You go into Seed, click a button, and they will send you a box with all the kit that you need, all prepackaged for you. We've also got a simulator for it as well. So if you want to do Internet of Things, but you don't want to spend $100 on kit, because $100, it's a lot of money. It is a lot of money to spend. And if you just want to dabble in there, you don't want to buy the hardware. We've got simulators that simulates the entire hardware stack for you. So you can do the whole thing. You can learn everything about Internet of Things. You can learn about sensors and actuators and gather data from sensors and control actuators, send the data to the cloud, process it, run artificial intelligence on the edge, all this kind of stuff without buying any hardware. It doesn't cost you a penny. And it's this kind of stuff we're bringing. And we're working with lecturers around the world who want to take this content and just teach in the classroom. They don't have an IoT course. They don't have the time to develop one because these are really busy folks who, for some reason, don't get paid very well. Education, our absolute most important thing on the planet. We don't pay them properly. And so if we can help them by saying, here's your curriculum pre-built, take what you want. It's completely free. We don't care what you do with it. take the bits you want, take the whole thing, whatever, then we can empower them to actually teach these concepts to students in a way that they couldn't do before because they just didn't have the concept.
You're teaching, what is it, training the trainers and giving them the resources they need, which is, to be honest, like I was a teacher for 11 years. The way Brandon sold me on developer relations was, I mean, I'm kind of still a teacher. Like you get to stay a teacher. And that seems to have been Brandon's philosophy behind the way he approaches. Does that make sense, Brandon, that you just see yourself as like a teacher, like as an educator, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think the best thing you can do as a developer advocate is to teach people. And kind of like Jim was saying, you teach them how to do cool stuff. And yes, Jim and I both work at Microsoft, so we're going to teach you how to do that cool stuff using the Microsoft tools. But yeah, all those skills will translate to other languages, other frameworks, other clouds. And so the idea is we just want you to become a better developer, be able to make good stuff, less bugs, with longer uptimes. But absolutely, yeah, teaching is the main part of the job.
Yeah, it's kind of two parts. It's we teach people how to do things, and then when they hit problems with what they're trying to do, we go back to Microsoft and say fix it so that we can teach people better. You know, we advocate for our audiences. You know, we are developer advocates, and I like to think of it as we advocate for developers, not. Our job involves advocating to developers, but really to me it's advocating for them so that we can provide them the support they need. And then when they say this doesn't work, I can't understand this, I don't know this, I want to do this, I don't understand. Your documentation it doesn't make sense for me, or the process flow doesn't make sense, or this is not logical, or I can't grok this. We can take that feedback back to the people at Microsoft and fix that, which means your learning experience is better. It's kind of like when you say you're a teacher, it's kind of like in the classroom, if a student can't understand the worksheet that they're working through, you can then go back to Teachers Pay Teachers, or wherever you got the worksheet from, or if it's your own worksheet.
I love Teachers Pay Teachers.
You can kind of fix that for the next set of teachers. My wife is a elementary school teacher, so I've been learning all about this. She literally just started. She graduated as an elementary school teacher focusing on special needs a few months ago, and so she's working as a substitute teacher in my daughter's elementary school just 5 minutes up the road, and she's supporting everything from the resource rooms, the learning centers, to classrooms. She's a kindergarten teacher today, so I get to hear about all these great facilities for teachers.
I love it. Teachers Pay Teachers. Shout out to you for saving my Great Gatsby unit in 2014. I really appreciate it.
So for those who don't know, Teachers Pay Teachers is where teachers can create learning materials and then sell it to other teachers. So if you're a teacher, you can literally buy learning materials. And the reason there's all this kind of transactional nature is teachers don't get given enough money to pay for the materials they need in class. And they just don't get paid enough anyway. So they have to buy it themselves because there's no other way to do it. But if they sell it on Teachers Pay Teachers, they can actually get more. They get paid more. The teacher's paycheck is pathetic for what they do. It's hideous how badly teachers are paid. I could probably spend the rest of the session just ranting about we can buy aircraft carriers and spend $2 trillion on fighter jets that don't work, but we can't pay teachers a decent wage, and we expect them to buy stuff. Last night, popped to the Dollar Tree with my wife so she could buy some stickers and pens and stuff to give out in class today out of her own pocket. And this is terrible.
And this is why I'm in tech.
This is why a lot of people are leaving teaching. There's a great resignation happening in teaching.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just, when I was in Prague, I was chatting with some folks who were from around that area, specifically Switzerland, and they were saying how teachers there, it's one of the highest paid professions. And when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense to have your best, brightest, smartest people teaching, because then they'll pass on that knowledge, and then the next generation becomes even bester, brighter, smarter.
It's leveling up, right?
You're investing in the next generation, and then you all will essentially grow as a society together. And those are going to be the people making the COVID vaccines 20 years from now, because the next
going to be around.
keep coming out.
Yeah, I mean, both of you are saying the exact same thing that I hear a lot of times, that teachers are underappreciated, undervalued, and certainly underpaid. And that Teachers Pay Teachers website, there's also free stuff on there. People believe in what they're doing so much that they'll just give it away for free. It's endemic that like teachers have to have something called Teachers Pay Teachers to make extra money. But I will say, like, there's some amazing, bright educators out there that are making amazing things for every kind of subject. And what Teachers Pay Teachers does, it doesn't just allow teachers to get paid for some of the work they're doing. It allows us to share stuff with each other. And you ask any educator in the world, if you're working at a school and another teacher says, "Oh, I don't know what to do for this unit," another teacher is going to step in and say, "I have something for you," and they will just give it to you. We are constantly just trying to give stuff to each other. So Teachers Pay Teachers said, "Look, we want you to keep doing that. We want a place for you to do that. But also you can get, $15 for this Great Gatsby unit, for this Pythagorean theorem unit. It comes with all the quizzes, tests, assignments that you need, and it gives you the curriculum. Hey, you're going to do this for 3 weeks. Here's what every day looks like. Here's what it looks like if you're on block schedule. Here's what it looks like if you're on a standard schedule." It's a fantastic website. Any educators out there, I highly recommend it. Jim, first off, I'm loving you for being like an education advocate on this show. It's fantastic. But I want to ask about, like, we're talking about education. We're talking about how you're helping educate the next generation. How did you get started with coding? What did your coding education look? Where did you start with tech?
So I actually started a very, very long time ago.
I don't believe it.
I actually started, would have been, 1983, 1984. So, we're talking 35 years ago. A lot. Yes, I am that old. I know I look a mere 21. But
listen, you are absolutely the youngest looking old person I've ever seen in my life. But so 1983,
compliment or an underhanded insult?
It is a high five, and I love you, Jim. Is what it means. 1983. So what machine is this on that you're programming on?
So I learned to program on the ZX Spectrum, the 48K version with the rubber keys. So there used to be an inventor in the UK, Sir Clive Sinclair. He sadly passed away 16th of September this year, but he was a brilliant inventor, and he was trying to bring computing devices to the masses. So he actually invented the first pocket-sized pocket calculator. The first one that's actually small enough to go in your pocket.
The first pocket calculator.
Yep. The first one that's small enough, the Sinclair Executive. And that was the first one that was small enough to go in your pocket. And he went from there and he started inventing computers. And he wanted to build home computers. So not the big ones you find in massive warehouses for data processing for businesses. He wanted to build home computers. So he started off with a thing called the ZX81 with 1 kilobyte of RAM in it. You could then get a RAM pack to expand it to 16 kilobytes of RAM, all based on the Z80 processor. And then he released, I think it was about 83, he released the 48K ZX Spectrum. So that's the one you got in the picture there, the one with the rubber keys. It was this lovely metal shell, had these rubber keys that you used to type. It had 48 kilobytes of RAM, and that is nothing. I've got source code files with that take up but it didn't have much RAM. It had no built-in storage. So what you had to do is you had to plug in a cassette deck. Now, for those who have not seen cassettes are literally long strips of magnetic tape that would kind of roll up in this plastic box. And you used to get music on there, and you get computer games on there. So you would have to buy a tape deck, a separate one.
Wow.
And then you plug in cables into the back of the Spectrum, and you could read from the tapes or write to the tapes. And that's how you'd save programs. There you go. There you go.
There.
So
wow.
And that actual cassette there, that's the one that that's ZX Spectrum Horizons. That came with the original Spectrum. It had a number of games on there. One called Horace Goes Skiing, I think, was on there. Hungry Horace, and a few other games. And it had some basic coding utilities.
So
I have to see Hungry Horace.
So just to paint a picture for anybody who's listening on the audio podcast, we're pulling up pictures of these of the ZX Spectrum, and if you can picture in your mind, this is what it reminds me of when you ever see like a police interrogation, and they have this
the tape deck
tape
for recording them.
And before they sit down, they hit the record button, and then they start interrogating them. That's what this looks like, but you're saying this is the computer.
Yeah. So the tape deck was separate, so you plug it in separate, and that's how that was your storage. No, none of this, save it to a zip drive or showing my age there again, or a floppy disk, or a USB stick or SD card. It was on a cassette, and
that's wild.
Yeah. And those cassettes, you'll get a cassette that could play, half an hour of music on the cassette, and that would record an entire program on them. It would take, so if you loaded a game, you could buy games on cassettes, and it would take 7 minutes to load. So you put the cassette in.
7 minutes?
Yeah. You'd run a command to say start loading the game. You press play on the tape deck, and it would take 7 minutes to load. And sometimes the game would crash as soon as it loaded, so you start all over again. But that was this was the first real home computer of its
and
day.
This, even this first picture I was looking at, it's from a Guardian article, and the title is "The Legacy of a Computer for the Masses." This is bringing it to homes in something that an average home could afford.
Yeah, this was like £100 at the time. I don't know what that back in the day.
Hold up, we're doing it. 1983 pounds to today money, and I'm guessing it's going to be like 350 pounds. That's what I'm guessing. 100 pounds is going to be like 350. Where can I type it in? Where's the calculator? There we go.
So $1.
We're going to do dollars.
Yeah, so probably about £300 today. So you think about how much you pay for a bottom of the range Xbox. So a games console. It's kind of that kind of price. So it was still expensive. Not everyone could afford one, but it was priced at a point that the masses could start to buy them. And you plug it into a TV, so you don't have to worry about any kind of monitors or nothing special to see it. You plug into a TV. And so, my dad came home with one day, and it was just amazing. It was this thing, and you put in the cassette and you play a game. It's like, wow. And then you could actually write in words, and it would convert the words to things that would happen. So the very first program I wrote, you always had to have line numbers because of the code. You program in BASIC, and you had to have line numbers. Very first program I wrote was line 1, print, quotes, hello, quotes. Ran that, and it printed hello on the screen. That was my first ever hello world, and probably about 83, 84.
Is that not the most exciting thing, though? Like I feel like everyone, the first time they said, computer, do this, and it did it, you're like, I am a god. This is life-changing.
Got better than that. 2, go to 1. Run that, and just went hello, 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 hello. Wow, this is the thing. And actually, if you go back to the pictures you had up there, there was one picture a little bit down below the picture of Sir Clive Sinclair. There's a picture there with an orange book. So when you got the Spectrum, it actually came with this big orange book. It was ring bound with kind of black spiral ring binding, and it had how to program in BASIC. So it actually taught you how to write BASIC code, and it had example programs you could type in. So you could type in word games like Hangman, or very basic graphics games. You're kind of just moving around the screen, things like that. And
so not only is it like an affordable computer for home, like, yes, you have to have a tape deck. Yes, you already have to have a television, but it also automatically already comes with how to program and how you can take what we have and build things with it.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that was part of Clive's idea. So Clive's idea was to try and not just bring a games machine, but bring an actual computer people would use. Yeah, they could program themselves, and there was lots of applications you could get for it. You get a printer for it, so you could do word processing. You could do a database where you actually save the data off to a cassette tape. So you have to load the database program from a cassette and then load your data from a cassette. But it brought all these things to it, and coding was just. It just exploded. So there were so many magazines and books that were being released on how to code. Now, I was young at the time. I was kind of 6, 7 as I started doing this. And I didn't have the attention span to do all the programs. Hangman was hundreds and hundreds of lines of code, and I would do a little bit, but I would get bored. But thankfully, my mum, absolutely fantastic person. She's absolutely incredible. And she had the patience to sit down with me and actually finish off typing. So I would do a bit, she would do a bit. I'd do a bit, she would do a bit, and she would support me in all the typing that I would do, so that we could get the program written. So thanks to her, I was able to. If it wasn't for her, I would have got bored. I didn't have the attention, but thanks to her, that got me hooked.
That's absolutely fantastic. I love the idea. Like sometimes it takes someone else kind of nudging you along and being like, look, I know it's not great right now, or you're not fully in right now, but if we just keep going, this could be. And surely she wasn't like, this is going to help you because in 30 years, you're going to be working at Microsoft and we're going to need you to make the money that you got to go out there and work for a tech company. She was just thinking, I know that there's something interesting here and I want you to get there. It's because sometimes you gotta wade through some stuff that's not as interesting. But like speaking of interesting, I think we have an ad break that we're gonna take real quick, and we'll just hear some from our sponsors, and we'll be back in just 1 second, y'all. Hi, if you're hearing my voice, that means you've been listening to or watching 8 Bits with Brandon and PJ, and we're here to talk to you about your product and how it can help you in your life by do whatever your product does. So if you're an avid listener of the show or you watch us on Twitch, then you'll know that your product is right for you. That's right. That's a real ad.
Genius.
I'm almost sad that one day we are going to replace that with a real ad. But if you'd like to advertise with us, this is a program that does take money, that Brandon's fronting all of it, and he needs to get paid back at least a little. No, we are. That's open. We will advertise on here. hello@8bits.tv. Will send us an email, and we will talk with you about that. Brandon, what do you think? This ad's so good.
So Jim, I'm really curious because I feel like if you told anybody nowadays that your first experience into computing and even gaming was, well, I turned it on and then I waited 7 minutes, and then if it didn't crash, I got to use it, and it was amazing. They would think you're crazy. So what was the next step? So how did this technology evolve, and then how did you evolve with it?
Yeah. I mean, the next step for me was I just coded. I just kept on coding, and I would try and do things more advanced. Now, things were a lot slower back then. It wasn't just 7 minutes that you have to wait for the game to load. If you needed to know how to do something now, you would just Google it, wouldn't you? You'd go into Bing and you'd Google it with Bing and you'd find the thing that you have to do. On brand.
Google it with Bing.
You Google it with Bing. But you can just go on the internet, you can get the answer. Back then, we didn't have that. There was no internet. And there wasn't like a community. I couldn't go onto a Discord forum and ask a question. I would have to literally go to the library.
Now, how did you find funny pictures of cats?
We didn't have funny pictures of cats.
What?
It wasn't
the dark ages before the internet. So did you go to the library and find more books on programming then?
Yeah. I mean, we used to go every week. So Wednesdays was late opening at the library, and because I lived too far away to kind of just go there on my own. 8, 9, 10 years old, I couldn't just get on my bike and ride 3 miles to the library. So we used to go every Wednesday. They had a late opening, so we'd go with my dad after work every Wednesday, and I would be looking around. I would get some books to read, and I would look in the computing section, and occasionally they would have some books. The problem is it's a library. They don't have 1,000 copies of every book, and they've still got a small amount of computing books, so even a smaller amount that were basic books for the Spectrum, and you had to hope that somebody hadn't taken the book out. So I'd go there, flick through, try and find a book. If they didn't have any books, it was up to the librarian. Excuse me, do you have any books on coding the Spectrum that I could reserve? And then you have to wait 3 weeks potentially for the book to come back so you could get it out again. And so you get this book and you'd be glued to it. I got one for graphics programming in BASIC on the Spectrum, and the last thing you built was like this haunted house. And so it's kind of this house in the woods, all 8-bit graphics. The Spectrum had this weird thing where every 8x8 pixel square, you can only have 2 colors. Just 2 colors per square. That kept the graphics memory down. That's how they could mass produce it. So it was very blocky graphics, and you'd build this build this house with trees and lightning flash, and then it would open up like a pumpkin would pop out. And, I got this book and it took me like 3 weeks to get all the code in, of course. And then I had to go back to the library and say, can I renew this library book, please? Because I haven't finished the code on there. And luckily no one wanted it. So I get out another 3 weeks and just finish off this graphics program. And it was just brilliant. And it was just kept me going. I was kind of alternating between programming and playing games. Downside is, I had a sibling, had to share the computer with a sibling, so it was, parents ruled you get 1 hour and that's it, and then you have the sibling. And I was halfway through coding something, stop, save it to cassette, wait an hour for my next turn, then go back on it. But just kind of carried that on going. The thing is, back then as well, there wasn't computer science education in schools. So I was doing this in my own time. At school, we didn't have any computers we could code. As I got older, as I got towards the upper end of high school, we had BBC Micros, which is from the British Broadcasting Corporation. Computers they released, gave them out to all the schools. And the computer lessons we had were how to put things in a card-style database, how to do desktop publishing. I did a GCSE, which is exams you do in the UK when you're 16, in IT. No coding at all. They didn't offer any coding. It was Excel, Serif Page Plus, how to use a handheld scanner. It was nothing there to do with coding. So I wasn't exposed to coding as a career. It wasn't really something that was talked about. In our career sessions, we didn't talk about the fact you could get into tech. It was something I was doing at home. And I knew some people at school who were dabbling with PCs and Pascals. And eventually we updated to a PC. And I kind of do a little bit of programming on the PC. But it wasn't really taught. And so I didn't have this idea in my mind of I want to go into a career as a programmer. It just wasn't a career that I knew about.
Right.
But I was actually enjoying chemistry. I was doing chemistry at school, loved chemistry, great teacher I had, absolutely loved chemistry. So I thought, I'll be a chemist. I'll go and work for some chemical company making stuff just because I like this and I have no idea what I want to do. And looking through chemistry degrees, and I saw a chemistry degree, and they called it computer-aided chemistry. And so it was a load of chemistry plus computer stuff.
Cool.
So you did things like coding. You do things like molecular modeling, so actually build 3D chemical structures on screen and work out protein folding and how they connect together. And then you did things like machine interfacing. So how do you control a piece of chemical equipment from code? So you write code to control a machine that puts stuff in things. And I thought, this sounds a lot of fun. Yeah, I'm enjoying this computing stuff. I've done some programming. I enjoy this chemistry stuff. Let's do this. And so got into this degree program. And I realized as soon as I did my first 8-hour lab as a coder, I was like, I don't care about chemistry. I just don't care about that. I just want to write code. But I kind of stuck with it. Probably should have switched degrees if I thought about it, but I still didn't really have a career path in my mind because nobody explained tech careers to me at the time. Did a couple of years of that, did an internship year. And for my internship year, I was working for what was SmithKline Beecham. It's now part of GlaxoSmithKline, one of the big global pharmaceutical conglomerates.
Yeah.
As a coder. They literally wanted somebody to write code. I'd done a little bit of code, and they said, come in and code for us. Spend a year writing code. So started off with some VBA, some classic ASP, not even ASP.NET. This was pre that. Just to get used to it. And then we dived into Delphi, which is Object Pascal. It's kind of drag and drop controls on the screen, write Pascal code behind. And I spent basically the bulk of a year as a Pascal coder, Delphi coder, building up systems for what's called combinatorial chemistry. So it's one of the tricks they do in pharmaceuticals is they will mix 100 of these, in all different combinations, produce 10,000 drugs, and then just test them against something to see what hits. It's a very slapdash approach, but they do it on bulk. They see a couple of things hit, and then they can dive in deeper. So okay. It sounds bizarre, but it works. It's really, really effective for certain things. And so we were building these systems to put it together, and I was getting paid to write code, and it was just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I was very junior, never had a professional code job before, and I worked with some fantastic people who supported me all the way through. It's, they saw I had an inkling for it, I had a real interest. It's like, right, you want to learn more? I've bought this book. Here you go. You have it first. You work through it first. You learn this thing. And here's some ideas about this. Here's some stuff like this from people who had been programming for longer. They still weren't professional programmers by trade. They started off in the lab doing chemistry, but they liked helping out on like writing some VBA and Excel. So they kind of got promoted into tech.
Yeah.
This was kind of 97, 98. So the job market for programmers was very, very small. It was kind of those citizen developers. But once I spent a year coding, it's like, that's it. This is what I want to do. Wrapped up my year of chemistry, and it's like, right, the next job I take, I'm a coder. Got to be a coder.
Fantastic. And it's funny, your career path was never like really a huge leap from one place to a completely different one. It was incremental and building on something that you had previously done before. And I think that's where a lot of younger people who are trying to get into the industry, they think, oh, I'm never going to make it up there. But a lot of times it's these like steps that build on what you've already done and what you've already created for yourself, that allows you to move from one level to the next. So I think your story seems to be a perfect example of that.
Yeah, I mean, my first professional job when I got out of university was working for a chemical and biological informatics company. So this company produced systems for managing chemical data, managing biological data. And I joined their chemical data team. So we were doing things like building what's called an Oracle data cartridge. So it allows you to find a new data type in Oracle that you can query. So we were querying chemical structures in Oracle. So this was back in 99, 2000. We could query a million structures in a tenth of a second to find out whether you had an exact match to a chemical structure. Yeah, it's pretty good stuff we were building, but I couldn't have built it without understanding the chemical structure. Yeah, how do you encode it? Well, you've got this thing of like these letters with lines between them. What does this mean? Well, actually, this is a benzene thing with a phenol group on it, and this is you've got a charge on this one, or you've got this, that, and the other. And because I understood the difference between an ionic bond, a covalent bond, a single bond, double bond, aromatic bond, triple bond, I knew how to write the code to take the chemical structures that these scientists were dealing with, encode those in a form the computer can understand, and then build the queries. So I was working with folks who all came from a chemistry background. The first guy I worked with did the same degree as me just 1 year beforehand. So it kind of allowed me to take my knowledge of chemistry with my love of and knowledge of computing and bring those together. And they didn't mind the fact that I didn't have that much programming experience. They were like, nope, you're week 2 here, you're going up to London for a C++ training course. You can spend a week up in London learning C++ because we want you for your aptitude and your chemistry skills. And you're saying that's kind of a path we're seeing a lot. We really are actually seeing that a lot with the idea of the rise of the citizen developer. So the whole kind of low code, no code movement allows people who have the business knowledge, they know the area they work in, but don't know tech, who want to get into tech, to take what they've got, take their knowledge and apply it using computer technology that is designed to be easily accessible for people who don't want to dig in and write code and take their first steps, just like the people I was working with when I was working for Smith Beecham. They started off with Excel, started to write VBA, and then they moved into programming teams. It's kind of the same idea now. You can start with the Power Platform, whatever low-code platform you want, to take what your skills, get into tech as a citizen developer, low-code developer, and then you can move into full-code developer if you want to. And it's as lovely. We've now got the tools to build that journey that I went on, 20 odd years ago.
Absolutely. Now, Jim, I got to ask a selfish question here, because a lot of this I'm learning for the first time, and we've known each other for years now. And it's funny because I've always known you as, or when I met you, we were mobile app developers together using Xamarin. So how do we bridge the gap? How'd you get from building processes for chemical companies to creating mobile apps in C#?
It was another set of kind of incremental steps. So did the chemical company for kind of 5 years, and the tech industry was really building up back then, especially around the City of London. So there was these big banks paying ridiculous amounts of money for people to work in tech. And I was working in a town called Guildford, half an hour outside of London, earning a good salary. But I was learning that I go to London, I could get this much money. There's a lot. Oh, hello. So I thought, why not? Let's go and work. Let's go and slave for the man. Let's go and earn some money. So I've been programming, full-time programmer for 5 years. I was really deep in C++. Yeah, that was the language back at the time, really deep in C++, and applied for a job at a bank and got offered a job with a massive pay bump. And it kind of went from there. I was working for banks, coding for banks, ended up traveling around the world. I was working for HSBC, the Hong Kong Shanghai Banking Corporation, in London. They asked me to help interview for a person with my skill set in Hong Kong, so we could actually integrate our system in London with their system in Hong Kong. And I said, I'll do it. I'll just move to Hong Kong. So I moved to Hong Kong.
I know the perfect guy for it.
It's me.
You know I can do it, and I'll move to Hong Kong. And my wife's always been of the attitude of, we'll just go. Whatever it is, we'll go. I came home and said to her, should I apply for this? And she said, why haven't you done it already? She's always up for any crazy schemes like that, which is fantastic. And so kind of working through the banking industry. But as I did that, I realized the banking industry is a toxic environment. This is not, this is very much a blanket statement. This is not meant to include everything. I know there are some great teams in banks, but in general, it is a toxic environment. Yeah, I'm working there with traders who only care about money. It's sexist, it's racist, it's constantly insulting each other. The number of times people be shouting insults across the office, they have the sexist comments that would come through from people. It's the racism that you'd get. It's a really toxic environment. It's all about money, and everyone can get away with whatever they like as long as they're making the money. And you start getting sucked into that culture, and that's not a good culture. I was kind of looking at myself going, I'm driven by money here, and this is not the right thing to do. This is not how I should be looking at it. The receipt for the McLaren from the trader who sits next to me as a coder fell on my desk. I was like, oh, I wouldn't mind that McLaren. He's driving around Hong Kong at 30 miles an hour. I wouldn't mind that McLaren. He gets money. And that's not a good mindset to have.
Sure.
And so I realized I needed a change. I ended up working in Bermuda for a hedge fund there because clean air. Hong Kong had bad air, not good for my daughter. Bermuda had clean air. And I just worked for a guy who was a terrible manager, and it just destroyed me. And it's like, what? I'm done with this. I'm done. I am literally done with this banking environment. It is not a good thing. And I'm done with this take culture that is banking. How can I give back? And so I started looking at the ways that developer communities worked. I started looking at the people who were giving back, the people I was learning from. What were they doing to contribute? And so I thought, I want some of this. Quit my job, went off to Thailand, parked in a co-working space. Again, my wife's like, yeah, let's go to Thailand. Parked in a co-working space, taught myself technology. I thought I want to learn something. I was a .NET developer at the time. I'd seen this Xamarin thing and a couple of Microsoft builds. I thought, this looks like fun. I want to learn this. I've got my iPhone. I've tried Objective-C. Let's try the Xamarin thing. And spent 4 months in a co-working space learning Xamarin. And as I learned it, I thought I'm going to give back every step of the way. So I was on the Xamarin forums, first of all asking questions, then answering questions. On Stack Overflow, answering questions. I was writing blog posts, I was blogging about everything I did. And so every step, how can I give something back? How can I give something back? Ended up back in London working for a bank because, the money runs out after a while. So London working for a bank. But I thought, while I'm doing this, I'm going to be community focused. So I was focusing on what meetups can I give talks at? What technology can I talk about? And got involved in the meetup scene. So I started off by going, then started giving sessions, started talking at meetups. How can I take this further? Applied to speak at Xamarin Evolve. What the hell? Let's apply to this big tech conference. So I've got no chance of getting in because I'm relatively unknown. And then we get people to say, you've been accepted, and we're going to make you a Xamarin MVP. So, wow. Jamie Singleton, I love you. Manager of Xamarin back then. She's now a business manager at Microsoft, the .NET team. But, it's just working with these amazing community folks who supported me as I was giving back to the community. And it was just really, really great. And so ended up getting a job as a Xamarin mobile developer in New Zealand because, travel around the world and just really coding, and still started off joining the local Xamarin meetup, ends up working as an organizer of that meetup, trying to bring people through, get them trained up, running Xamarin events. Flew off to Xamarin Evolve, gave a talk there, had a fantastic session. And it's just, I got into this culture of constantly giving back to the community. And I loved it. It was so good for my soul.
You didn't have to wait either. Like this is what, and I think like I'm immediately taking a lesson from this. A lot of people think, oh, I need to establish myself. Then I can start do it as you're going. When you learn something and you figure it out, tell someone else about it, because the way you figured it out might help somebody else. And especially the way you said you worked with Xamarin, you were like, I was writing as I was learning. I'd learn something, I'd make a blog about it. I'd learn something, I'd get on the forum. I'd learn something, I'd go to a meetup. I'd listen at the meetup. Eventually, I'd go to a bunch of meetups, and I'm like, oh, I want to talk about something at a meetup. You don't have to wait until you're established to start being a part of the community. The community is hungry for people to give to it. And so start giving as soon as you can.
But also the community, a lot of this community is made up of beginners. There's a lot of people looking to learn. So they're in the same boat as you. So if you can say, here is this very simple thing that I've worked out how to do, you may not think it's much, but there is probably 1,000, 10,000 people out there across the world who also want to learn that simple thing. And so because you're doing it from the perspective of a beginner, you've made it accessible to all those beginners. Kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about Microsoft's fantastic documentation for professional developers, and we're identifying these gaps where beginners come along and just get swamped by it. If you can do this very basic, here's how you do this. Here's the very much not even 100 level, the 0 level. This is how you get started. This is what this button does. This is where the run button is in Visual Studio Code.
Yes.
There's a lot of people who want to find this information out, and the more that's there, the easier it is to find it on Google. So yes. If you think I want to be involved in a community, but I'm a beginner, that is the perfect time to start. You put out your beginner content, you help others on the same journey as you. And then as you get better, just keep that humble nature in your mind of, I remember when I was a beginner, the kind of content I needed to create. Now that I'm more advanced, I need to keep creating that beginner content because that's what people love. If you look at the conference sessions, the ones that they like, we want this really detailed conference session for this conference so people can learn something, but the ones that are packed are usually the 100 level sessions, the 0 level sessions, the very intro sessions. There is a huge demand for introductory content out there. And as new technology comes along, things keep changing, there's more demand for this beginner content. So now, if you want to get involved, do it now. Start creating now. Write that blog post today. Take that one, print hello, 2, go to 1, and blog about it. Do that now.
Brandon, this is the exact advice you've been giving me for a year. I love it.
I was going to say, I couldn't say it any better myself. And it's funny because I used Jim's content. Like I said, I looked up to Jim in the community, and I wouldn't have the job I have today if Jim hadn't, if I hadn't heard that Jim was taking this role on the same team. So, thank you, Jim. And more so, thanks so much for joining us on the show today. We only have 1 minute left, but let people out there know where they can find you.
Yeah, I'm all over the internet, Jim Bob Bennett. So if you just Google Jim Bob Bennett, you'll probably find me on Twitter, GitHub, LinkedIn, Instagram, Jim Bob Bennett. I'm a really friendly chap. Please connect. If you build anything cool, share it with me. I want to celebrate everybody's success. So if even if it's just something you think is not cool, you've got your first LED lit on an IoT device, share it with me. I want to celebrate your success. I love when people share their projects with me. So please say Jim Bob Bennett, everywhere on the internet, please connect. Please share the great things you've done so we can celebrate it together.
It's great. This makes me so happy. This makes me so dang happy. This has been a great show. Brandon, thank you for helping me be on this show. Jim, thank you for being on this episode. I'm super happy to be here right now.
Thank you both for having me. This has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate everything that the two of you do. Really appreciate all you do for the communities, and I appreciate the chance to be here with you today.
Likewise, Jim. And thanks for listening, everybody. This has been another episode of 8 Bits, and we'll see you again next week.